In your 30 seconds to wrap up, the board clerk will pass a blue sheet, so you know your time is almost up. Thank you. This time, Dan Pryzbyla.
Interestingly, we never think too much about the word takeover itself. It's not exactly what you call a user-friendly term. Takeover is the act of seizing, appropriating, or arrogating authority, control, management, etc. To arrogate, to claim unwarrantably, presumptuously, assume, or appropriate to oneself without right. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about democracy. Because a takeover and democracy are not even congruent. There's nothing equal about them. What happens is, in this issue, it's a large issue. It's not just Milwaukee. People have indicated things happening in Chicago, in New York, but elsewhere around the country. In fact, 10 years ago, the Washington Post had an article in its national weekly edition of some education issues going on. This was in March of 1999. First, and the title of this little blip was, "First, Eliminate Public Schools." There won't be a dull moment at House Education Committee hearing this year. They're talking about Colorado. Not with freshman Colorado Representative Tom Tancredo, a Republican on the committee. Tancredo is a former public school teacher and state legislator who served as regional director of the Department of Education under Presidents Ronald Reagan and George Bush. Despite his paycheck, he called for getting the federal government out of education. But Tancredo, who headed a conservative think tank before his election, has gone even a bit further than that. Tancredo, the Denver Post revealed 2 weeks ago, has signed a modest pledge calling for the elimination of all public schools. So we have to see this in a larger political spectrum. While we are dealing with hands-on stuff here, we have to realize that we're fighting against sources not even directly involved with MPS. It's no coincidence that Tim Sheehy, the president of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Association of Commerce, would show up at every closed school hearing and not only sit there and observe, but actually, you can say, are you for or against the closing? Tim Sheehy, every time, was for the closing of any school being closed. So I don't think he really represents the interests of all business. The organization, in theory, does. But to take that and say, let's forget about the effects of the economy on Milwaukee, Tim Sheehy should not only worry about MPS, he's got to provide the jobs out there. That's what his job is, not coming to meetings here and voting to close the school. For that in mind, I've been working with the coalition. We've got wonderful people on the coalition. And our basic thing is the amazing input that we have compared to this trio that comes bopping into education land. There's no comparison. I mean, in our little meetings at NAACP, they're not little, but they're just woo. They never had any woo. I thank you very much.
When I was in Milwaukee Public Schools, I got a good education. I was prepared to attend the University of Chicago, where I succeeded. I got a bachelor's degree. At that time, the superintendent was Harold S. Vincent. And although I like Mayor Zeidler, looking back with 20/20 hindsight, I don't believe that Mayor Zeidler could have appointed a better superintendent than the Board of School Directors did at that time. The governance system, which is still in effect today with the only change of the district representation of our time, is basically the same. It worked then, it can work now. Moreover, in every other public school district in the state of Wisconsin, school officials are selected by an elected board. In the suburbs, in Brookfield, Whitefish Bay, Wauwatosa, why, if their school districts are performing satisfactorily, and I think most of them are, why then should the same governance method not be appropriate for the city of Milwaukee? I would say that the answer is that the governance system is basically sound and there's no need to change that to a mayoral takeover. But there is another issue I would like to address, and that is a matter of school board elections, which has also been discussed by Mr. Zechman. It's true that the number of voters at school board elections is substantially lower in turnout than of the other major elections that are held in the city and the state. Mr. Zepnik proposed having the school board election in November. The trouble with that is that the November election is a partisan ballot, whereas the Board of School Directors is selected on a nonpartisan ballot. And what you'd have to do would be to give every voter two different ballots, one a partisan and then one a nonpartisan. And I think that that is really complicating the matter too much to make it worthwhile to move it to November. But I have another alternative. Why not elect the school board at the same time as the mayor of Milwaukee and Milwaukee aldermen? That is a high turnout election. It's nonpartisan, every 4 years in the spring. And I would propose that the entire board of school directors, all 9 members, be elected at the same time as the mayor and the county executive. That will focus tremendous attention on that election. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Wendell, how about the other joint?
The world knows the position of the NAACP when it comes to voters' rights, disenfranchisement, and any attack on democracy anywhere in the world. The Milwaukee branch of the NAACP absolutely will not, the Wisconsin State Council branches, NAACP, will not lie down while our democratic rights are being challenged by anyone. That means the mayor, the governor, the director of public education, Mr. Tony Evers. We've made our point, our position very clear. We won't back away. The coalition that was brought together at our office at the NAACP with the help of my good friend, Mr. Bob Peterson. We worked on issues together this past year, very big issues for MPS, and this, I would say, is the largest, the biggest issue, and we're not going to back away until we win this fight. The NAACP, when we look at the claims around the country that are made by cities like New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. about mayoral takeovers that are working, there's one common thread that we find in all those cities, and that thread is that the people's right to have input in their education system in all of those cities have been totally taken away. This is bigger than the $10 million that we may gain in this state or in this city for education. Our democratic process in this country is under attack, and the tool to destroy our process is now our public education system. This is really scary stuff, and we have to stand together as a community to prevent it. So with that, thank you, and we'll see you in the winner's circle. Thank you.
All right.